Hey everybody, I'm Sin. Welcome to the Book Nook. Today we are going to talk about Amy Bruni's Life with the Afterlife. This is a paranormal book, and I love all things paranormal. Without further ado, let's get into it. This book is called Life with the Afterlife, 13 Truths I Learned About Ghosts. She basically goes into her whole background, like growing up with ghosts, living in a haunted house when she was younger, and she had kind of some, new agey parents, and they taught her not to be afraid of what couldn't be explained. And I think that probably kicked off a lifelong interest and experiences of the paranormal. She says in the book that when she started out with ghost hunting, she had a very distinct idea of what she believed, but all she learned was basically that she doesn't know a whole lot, and there's so much more to learn and know, and it's such a, interesting field to be in, to be able to do that for a career, and it's pretty cool. This book was it was a super easy read. I breezed through it in 2 days. It was fascinating. It was really cool to see her background growing up, then to get into when she was on her time on Ghost Hunters to present day now with the show that she co-stars with Adam Berry. And they are also co-producers of Kindred Spirits, which is one of the better, in my opinion, one of the better ghost-related shows that has to do with the phenomena. So yeah, growing up, her and her dad would go to haunted locations. And then in the first house that they lived in Alameda, California, it was haunted. She talks about this one point in the book that she's in her room and she looks out the window and she sees, and the room's on the second floor, mind you, and she sees this guy who looks like he's in a green uniform, maybe some sort of war uniform, and so this is the second floor, so there's no way he could be standing there. But they get into the historical information behind it. She's a big, big advocate of researching, going into town and getting into the local records and kind of researching, So they researched the house and they found out that the house they lived in used to have a second floor veranda. So there used to be kind of a porch out there. So that ghost is, in theory, standing on the porch. She views ghosts as people with stories to tell, that we should respect them. Would you want to talk to someone if someone came up to you and was like, hey, I don't know, just yelling at you about how you died? Obviously they wouldn't say that to you because you're alive, but the way that some people approach ghost hunting by yelling and being rude, if I was a ghost, I wouldn't want to talk to them. So that you should approach them with respect. You catch more flies with honey or something like that. I think that's a saying. I don't know. She also talks about in the beginning with ghost hunting, how when she was on Ghost Hunters, they basically were just kind of focusing on the activity, not really on helping with what was going on. So in the beginning, it was all about, just see if there's actually something happening, because a lot of times when they go to houses, they find out, it's electrical or it's plumbing and it's not actually the place is haunted. And I guess people get really upset by that too. So there's you gotta be sensitive to that. Another thing too that she talks about with children, how sometimes they get contacted by people from all over the country, and just a lot of times with kids, sometimes, she's like, have you talked to their pediatrician first to see, sometimes it could be mental and not ghost activity, and people don't want to hear that either. So she gets into some of that too, which I found pretty interesting. Not everything is a haunting. Yeah, sometimes people just want it to be explained away as a haunting instead of hey, you're plumbing and the pipes are just knocking around, it's your house is old and your floor creaks, stuff like that. I guess that would be disappointing if you did think your house was haunted. I understand, but people need to not get so worked up about it. So also with Kindred Spirits, their goal is to help as well as to find out if there is any actual paranormal activity happening. And by helping, it's more so listening finding out a ghost's name, finding out their story, what happened, so that they feel heard. Instead of just like, oh, yep, it's a ghost, all right, bye. And then like that doesn't solve anything. And she's a big advocate of like, they don't send ghosts into the light. She doesn't think you should try to do that because you don't know their religious background or how they were raised, you know? Everyone has a different lifestyle and beliefs growing up, and who are you to try and force that on someone? So there was a lot of really good points that I wouldn't necessarily have thought of that she brought up in this book. And it was pretty fantastic. And like I said, it's an easy read. I breezed through it, like easy breezy. She mentions, she talks a lot about people who she loves and that have helped her in the paranormal, the Ghost Hunters crew with Grant Wilson and Chris Williams and the other people on there. And then she talks a lot about John Tenney and Greg and Dana Newkirk. And just, it's such a good book. It's funny, I've read so many paranormal books. Everybody loves John Tenney. I read, not too long ago, I read Andrea Perron's A Wonder to Behold. And that's her book about her experiences with UFOs and contact and all that stuff. And she mentions John all over that book. Everybody loves John Tenney. So do we. As I've said before, he's one of the most interesting people I have ever met. And I am honored to call him a friend. We also have some videos of John Tenney when we've had him on our channel on Twitch. There's a whole playlist of him if anyone's interested in that. He's a paranormal researcher. He's been doing it for years. So yeah, Life with the Afterlife, 13 Truths I Learned About Ghosts by Amy Bruni. This book was great. Also, I've decided I'm not going to do star ratings for nonfiction. Because I've still been, as I've said before, kind of torn about the star rating. I'm not going to do ratings. I'm just going to talk about what I liked, and if there's things I disliked, I'll talk about that too. There wasn't anything I really disliked about this book. The way she writes is just a nice, easy flow. It was fantastic, kind of like learning about Amy's background and how she grew up and how she was raised, just, you know, not to fear the unknown, which is, you know, cool. And that leads you into where she's come today, which is pretty cool. I highly recommend this book if you want to dip your toe into the paranormal waters, or maybe you already have, or if you haven't heard of Amy Bruni. This book is great. You can also check her out on Kindred Spirits. Thank you, everyone, for being here today in the Book Nook, where we talk about the awesomeness that is books. I love it. You love it. That's why we're here. So until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.